Data is the new oil, a resource that is being mined in every corner of the world. And as we speak now, it is being mined now as well. Data is invasive and data is everywhere. To put things into perspective, we create 2.5 million terabytes of data each and every single day. And to put things into your perspective, that means we are using approximately 5 million laptops that we use on a daily basis to store the data, or 19.5 million smartphones that we hold so dearly to ourselves to store the data that we create each and every single day. In quarter four of 2020, the smartphone companies sold approximately 360 million smartphones around the globe. And that would have taken less than 18 days to store the data that we create each and every single day. So there is lots and lots of data that is out there, but how are we using it? What is the use case and where is it being effectively utilized in making decisions and in changing the outcome that might have not happened otherwise? There are lots and lots of examples of it. The first example of it, we can go to the US elections, and it is a spectacle for us to watch. And let us go back a little to Barack Obama's era. Can we all say that Barack Obama was an eloquent leader? I would say so. Was he an inspiring leader? I would think so. But were those the only traits that led him to win the presidency twice? I don't think so. Data was the reason why he was able to be where he is today, or where he was then. In 2010, his chief data scientist was able to predict that the midterm elections would be lost by the Democrats 5 months in advance, where the pundits and the projections all across the country and all across the different states had projected that the Democrats would win. Data was there and data was able to predict that. In 2012, the same data scientist ran the algorithm once a week to understand the different patterns of voters, the different understandings of the voters, to be able to tell the volunteers what doors to knock and what to convey, what messages to send and what calls to make, because that is what makes the difference. And he was able to turn that in making sure that he won the second elections as well. Moving on to Donald Trump. How do we put it simply? A man of simple words, a controversial leader, but behind all of that, he too was able to effectively utilize data to win the 2016 elections. And it might sound weird with the things that he said online or things he said over the course of 4 years, but it is true. He leveraged data each and every single day to make sure or to inform his decisions. Each and every single sentence, each and every single policy that he had was on the grounds of analyzing data, was understanding what was happening with his voter base on social media to create the policies and to create the sentiments and send out the messages that they were looking for. His campaign would send out 100,000 messages per day, specified messages to different voters across the country to make sure that they were conveyed the message that they were looking for. And that's how he was able to win. Moving on to Netflix, an amazing streaming service that we use on a daily basis. It uses data to recommend the movies and the TV shows that we love to watch or that we think that we like. 75% of those are done through a recommendation system, which then uses data. And that helps them save $1 billion a year in churn rate. To our next example, Amazon. Amazon uses the recommendation system or our data to recommend the products that we usually look for. And that helps them generate 35% of their annual sales. That is 35% of their annual sales through use of data. And lastly, if you look at brick and mortar, I was able to use big data to generate $14 million in sales and increase the gross margin dollars by 353%. How and what's the common factor behind all of these different use cases and different examples? I would think big data. Data, how do we leverage it? How do we implement it? And how do we effectively use it is what lies behind success in today's day and age. But a survey from McKinsey that asked the leaders from across the world of different organizations, whether or not that they thought if the different analytics approaches and the different data activities that they had in their respective companies would turn out effective and would turn out a good result. And 86% of those denied it. 86% of them said that they do not think that data will be effectively used within their organization. So why is the problem? Or what is the problem that is causing us to not be able to use the data? In an age where data is so invasive, in an age where screen time is a lot more than the face-to-face interaction that we used to have, why is it that we're not able to leverage data effectively? The problem is that we overcomplicate the solution, that we overcomplicate the problem itself. That's our nature. We think or we want to do too much in one go, and that is where the problem lies. And we need to be able to fix that in order to effectively leverage data and in order to be effectively use it in different use cases. And so how do we go about doing that? The first thing that a lot of individuals within the data science industry or within the data field forget to do is to set the objective or to understand what the objectives are. It is a very basic concept that all of us are taught and that all of us think is intuitive, that we would need to know what the objectives are of a particular project before we go on and before we work on something. But a lot of times objectives are not set. We are working in an endless vicious cycle that has no end to it. And so that is the first step in becoming successful in an age where data is extremely invasive and is available everywhere. Having that objective to know where we're going. And then the second piece of that is to making sure that the data or the way or the objectives are simple and understandable. They have to be precise and they have to be concise because we need to be able to implement them effectively and efficiently. And once we have those two foundational pillars set in place, we then go on to the ideation piece, where we then have to think about how can we interact with the different stakeholders, how can we bring them together to understand what is the problem and how can we solve it. And the ideation piece is extremely, extremely important in the field of data and in today's world. Because if we don't understand or if we don't have all of the stakeholders in a room to understand what it is that we're trying to create or what it is that we're trying to solve, we're never, ever going to be able to solve it. The second step is that of the development, making sure that the models, the algorithms, the data science, the data itself is effectively leveraged in the development of it. This is where small or simple is better. The concept of that becomes extremely, extremely relevant. We can develop very complicated algorithms and those would result in amazing results. But in a lot of times, they end up creating more problems and more complications for us. So making sure that the model or the objective is kept in sight and that we develop something that gives us the output should be the main outcome that we should look for. And lastly, and one of the most important piece I think that is required is that of implementation. We can have an amazing object and we can make sure that it's concise. We can create and we can sit with all of these stakeholders to understand how can we solve it, and then we can develop a model. But if we don't have a team in place or if we don't have leaders in place that are going to get it implemented, it is never, ever going to work. And so it is extremely, extremely important and an imperative in today's world where we need to make sure that it is effectively communicated to each and every single individual as to what the idea is, what the model is, and what's its purpose. And then making sure that it is communicated to each and every single stakeholder in telling them how it will impact their particular jobs or their respective fields, and how can they then leverage those models or the outputs from those models in making sure that they make their daily activities a lot more resourceful and a lot more effective. And that in itself is a cycle that we all need to have in today's day and age to making sure that we are able to effectively use the data and effectively use the different machine learning algorithms and field of AI in making good use of it and having good and useful use cases. And so with that, I would like to say data is the new oil and it is where the future is. And we need to make sure that we are able to understand the data and we're able to funnel it down to a level that where we can understand it and we can take actions based on the data that we see or that we create ourselves. Thank you.